Keisuke Masunaga. Despite having a relatively short time on the franchise compared to other animators I've discussed within this series, like Naotoshi Shida and Tadayoshi Yamamoru, he still left quite a memorable legacy behind and became a favourite for many fans. While some supervisors and animators approached the series with a more refined and perhaps cleaner look to characters, Masunaga's episodes completely went in the opposite direction, leaning towards quite a rugged and expressive style, and thus giving a look that, whether you're a fan or not, was certainly unique. Masunaga has also worked on other well-known series like One Piece, Cowboy Bebop, Sailor Moon, and many more. So join me today as we go over why Keisuke Masunaga is a legend. So Masunaga was in his late 20s when he entered into the Dragon Ball franchise, which was Dragon Ball Z episode 174, working for Studio Cockpit. In total, he would contribute key animation within 19 episodes and 2 movies, as well as filling the role of animation supervisor for 18 episodes. But let's take a look at what made him so well regarded, and that is his animation. Like mentioned, 174 marked his debut as an animation supervisor, as well as a key animator, providing a bit of animation to the start of the episode of Trunks training with a snappy barrage of punches and kicks with some rather smooth movement. You additionally got several of his other trademark traits, such as his smears and speed lines, but it's several episodes later, in particular episode 179, where you really get to see his work in full force. The movement has an incredibly rapid speed as these two characters battle. The punches hold a lot of weight thanks to some great timing, superb drawings, and holding the key pose, selling the impact of major hits. And his effects work was likewise just as dramatic. With lightning effects, he could draw some really unique shapes with razor thin lines, which gave an extra layer of intensity to his power-up scenes. With smoke, it featured a lot of C-curves with jagged cuts in the shapes, providing a rough and flowy look. Masunaga also made frequent use of smears, blending very nicely to the fluid movement of his characters. But not only was his animation smooth, his artwork was equally impactful, with a lot of high detail keyframes throughout his scenes. Masunaga's style typically strayed from the character sheets, especially in the earlier episodes, where characters were drawn with bold mouth corners, very angular jawlines, large eyes, small pupils, and thin eyebrows. The shapes for the hair were very sharp as well, and often had quite a flowy look. Overall, this really gave such an intense look to characters, fusing perfectly with villains like Cell and the overall tone of his episodes. However, this style became somewhat more refined near the end of the Cell arc, like in 191 and into the Boo arc, with a somewhat more softer touch to the jawlines, noses, hair, and the mouths also being a little different, as well as the pupils becoming larger. However, it still looked great, and one thing that certainly remained fairly unchanged was his approach to clothing, gestures, and anatomy, with exception to the anatomical proportions becoming gradually larger, especially for necks on characters like Goku and Vegeta. However, that was more likely to do with the look set by the character sheets. Regardless though, he often opted for a more detailed look. As an example, this layout by Takayuki Manaka from Studio Cockpit, you can see Manaka has drawn the various muscle groups for the forearm and upper arm in that very solid and blocky look, very much in line with the character sheets. However, with Masunaga's Genga correction, you can see he has defined the brachioradialis much more, as well as enlarging the sternomastoid, pecs, and the lateral head of the tricep, and you can see this approach consistently taken, which gave a really strong feeling to his characters. His gestures likewise were excellent, typically being quite interesting and dynamic with a very forceful feel. Additionally, facial expressions were incredibly impactful, with Masunaga being quite skilled in drawing insanely exaggerated expressions, really selling the horror within moments such as Spopovich and Bobity's death, or really lending itself well to comedic scenes. Furthermore, he would detail a lot of the skin folds and creases across the face with quite angular lines that helped in bringing out that expressivity to faces, and paired with his shading, which featured a lot of triangular and pointy shapes, it added another layer of ruggedness and depth to his work. However, despite having a very rough touch to male characters, his female characters were quite appealing also. The shapes for the shading weren't as triangular with more C-curves, and the line work had a softer look overall. With characters like 18 as an example, he would draw the jawline a little longer, add extra lashes, and give her quite sleek and thin eyes, moving away more from the boxy shape to something a bit more triangular. and I think it really speaks to his skill in how well he was able to bring out the various personality of characters he would draw. If it was an older character like Old Kai, he would really make that clear, with not just some but a lot more wrinkles around the eyes and detailed shading around those creases. If it was villains, he would exaggerate and add certain features, displaying an even more cunning look. For male characters, he would go out of his way to express how strong and muscular they were, and just like mentioned with female characters, Masunaga would go off model if it meant drawing something even more appealing. And finally though, to his work as an animation supervisor. So Masunaga was quite meticulous in correcting other animators, and in some cases, depending on who the supervisor was, it could provide a downgrade rather than any improvement. However, with Masunaga, his corrections were typically for the better, injecting such an energetic feel into his episodes and consistently across the board for all characters. It doesn't matter if it's some no-name filler character or Goku himself, he made sure to deliver something always interesting and impactful. And in closing, one scene that really embodies all of the elements mentioned so far is the part he played in the finale of an incredibly iconic episode and scene, and that was of Gohan defeating Cell in 191. This episode marks the first time of Masunaga supervising an episode entirely himself, without Naoki Mihara, who worked as an uncredited assistant supervisor on Studio Cockpit's first 3 episodes, and with Masunaga's supervision, like mentioned earlier, he consistently portrays characters with powerful expressions throughout the whole episode. And to his scene, as the Kamehameha rips into Cell, his face contorts to such extremes with a smoothly animated cut of Cell melting away with then some beautiful arcing effects. It's such a well executed scene that is incredibly memorable, and well, that's why Keisuke Masunaga is a legend. So thank you all for watching. I really enjoy making videos for the Legend series, so I hope you enjoyed it too. Although they typically take the most time to produce, which is why I certainly don't rush out to make new editions. And if you want to see the other videos in this series discussing legends like Naotoshi Shida and Katsuyoshi Nikatsuru, check out the playlist, and like always, I'll see you later.